This episode contains situations and themes that may be distressing for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Well, said Cucumetto, have you executed your commission? Yes, Captain, returned Carlini. At 9 o'clock tomorrow, Rita's father will be here with the money. It is well. In the meantime, we will have a merry night. This young girl is charming, and does credit to your taste. Now, as I am not egotistical, we will return to our comrades and draw lots for her. You have determined, then, to abandon her to the common law, said Carlini. Why should an exception be made in her favor? I thought that my entreaties... What right have you, any more than the rest, to ask for an exception? It is true. But never mind, continued Cucumetto, laughing. Sooner or later, your turn will come. Carlini's speech clenched convulsively. Now then, said Cucumetto, advancing towards the other bandits. Are you coming? I follow you. Cucumetto departed without losing sight of Carlini, for, doubtless, he feared lest he should strike him unawares. But nothing betrayed a hostile design on Carlini's part. He was standing, his arms folded, near Rita, who was still insensible. Cucumetto fancied for a moment the young man was about to take her in his arms and fly. But this mattered little to him, now Rita had been his. And as for the money, 300 piastres distributed among the band was so small a sum that he cared little about it. He continued to follow the path to the glade. But to his great surprise, Carlini arrived almost as soon as himself. Let us draw lots, cried all the brigands when they saw the chief. Their demand was fair, and the chief inclined his head in a sign of acquiescence. The eyes of all shone fiercely as they made their demand, and the red light of fire made them look like demons. The names of all, including Carlini, were placed in a hat, and the youngest of the band drew forth the ticket bore the name of Diavolaccio. He was the man who had proposed to Carlini the health of their chief, and to whom Carlini replied by breaking the glass across his face. A large wound extending from the temple to the mouth was bleeding profusely. Diavolaccio, seeing himself thus favored by fortune, burst into a loud laugh. This is one of those episodes, actually the last handful of episodes that make me not nervous, not, overwhelmed, but I wished I had a bit of a committee to run things by to determine whether or not they deserve a content warning. I think I'm going to put one up just to be safe. If you didn't hear it, my apologies. This is really, it's not glorifying this behavior. I would hope people don't see it as that. But this is rough, man. Dumas has just been really dragging us across the ground over the last couple chapters. We get the heights of the, hashish trip, but all the stuff with Morel, and now we got this. I suppose we're rooting here for Carlini and Rita, obviously Rita. It's one of those moments in a story where the situation is so terrible, but there's this, what's the word I want to use? Not attraction. There's this excitement, and I don't mean that in necessarily a positive context, just like an arousal of danger in a way that makes a situation within a story kind of crackle with dread or fear or unbearable tension. And you can see where people can be kind of tasteless and exploit things for this kind of shock value. But this moment here where Carlini is facing Diavolaccio, knowing that to go against him is to go against the tribe, but Diavolaccio has a particular gripe against Carlini, and so he's just gonna, the situation's bad, and you didn't think it could get worse, and now there's this shit-eating grin across Diavolaccio's face that's just like, you have no idea the shit I'm gonna get up to here. he bursts into a loud laugh. Obviously in my ears, I hear it as an evil laugh. How can it not be an evil laugh? And it makes me deeply uncomfortable. I would prefer not to be experiencing this, but I mean, sometimes art needs to make us a little uncomfortable, and by feeling uncomfortable, we can be invested a little bit more to the emotional stakes, to wanting good outcomes for things. That's I've mentioned before that I love horror films, and trust me, I've seen some of the worst exploitation horror films you can imagine. And there is a fine line of wanting to walk up to the line of good taste, and even like discovering when you're at that line that the line isn't so binary, that it's kind of a gradient line, that you can tow it further than you kind of think you could. But there is a point of no return. There is a point where you can cross it and you lose the audience completely. You lose whatever commentary or whatever provocation you're going for can be completely compromised by miscalibrating how far to push it. And the journey up to that point, again, not in a romanticized way, but can be exciting. It can, a little provocation isn't bad, but it sounds like I'm defending what's happening here. And suffice it to say, that's a very nuanced topic. Clearly, you have to talk about representation. You got to talk about what it is, the point you're making. What are you trying to provoke? Doing it with intentionality. All of that stuff. It goes deep, deep, deep into this, and not just this. Anytime you are writing something of this, man, remember I told you when I get into these uncomfortable situations, I tend to over intellectualize. So, yeah, let's just mention it before we end today. Things aren't looking good for Rita. Things aren't looking good for Carlini. And this does seem like a pretty despicable band of brigands. I'm not a fan of what is happening. Hopefully Luigi Vampa shows up. Isn't that the story we're talking about? Maybe he's going to swoop in like Zorro and save a few folks. Oh boy. Okay, stick with me, folks. We'll all get through this one way or another. We are at the halfway point of chapter 33. How much longer can this Luigi Vampa story go? I have no idea. So join me here tomorrow as we continue forth. Until then, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.